Hi everyone, I'm Nancy McNally, and today we're going to talk about the Fall Quilt-A-Long for 2025. If you have subscribed to my newsletter, you probably know all about it. So let me tell you real quick about what's going on for this fall, starting Monday, September 28th, which is today. You still have plenty of time to participate. So we're going to make a quilt for fall that is 42 by 42 inches. Very simple. Every Monday at 9 a.m. you can download the new block for that week from my website. I will have the link in the newsletter so you know right where to go. So let me grab my papers. All right, so I'm going to show you a picture of the quilt, and this is what we're working on. There is a total, there's a center block, and that's the market block, and then it's surrounded by four, you'll see them in the four corners of the quilt, the four log cabin pinwheel blocks. Those are new, and then you'll find the remaining blocks, the order in which they will be released. September 8th is block 1. It also says block 2 because that's the framing of that block. So you will be making the market square block, the framing that goes around it, and the inner border. That way you'll have it all together. All right, so let's talk about our yardage. There is a supply list for you to download on my website, and it will give you the rules, the schedule I just read off to you, and the yardage chart. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you what you need. For your background fabric, anytime I say background fabric, that's the main fabric that's throughout the quilt. I'm using a light printed fabric, and I'm calling it again background fabric, 2 yards. Your dark blue, you'll need a ½ yard. Your green, which includes the binding, will be 1 yard. You'll also need a second background, and I use this throughout, but there are smaller portions throughout the quilt that I use the second background, and it definitely has, it has more yellows in it than it does creams, and you might see Bruce in just a minute because he just jumped onto my sewing table. And if you don't know who Bruce is, well, he's a cat, and I call him Mr. Bruce Kitty. So for background 2, you'll need a fat quarter. For our yellow, you'll need a fat quarter, coral, or a cinnamon. You will also need a fat quarter. And I've listed 2 colors as one, teal or jade, whichever one you prefer over the other. It doesn't matter. You'll also need a fat quarter. Choose one of those colors. If you don't like either of those colors, I would suggest that maybe you increase your green fabric, maybe another green, maybe something darker than the original one that I said you need a yard and you're going to use in the binding. Something that it doesn't match that original green or the first green that I told you about. All right, now it's time to put together the first block, our market square. I'm going to get set up for that and we'll get started. So for week 1, we will be making the market square quilt block, and it has a framing around it, and it also has a border after the frame. But right now we're going to focus on just making this quilt block. Now, in the original block that I made a mistake. So look right here. You can see this is the background number 2 listed in the pattern, and this is your main background throughout. So when I was cutting, I got carried away, and I used the main background. That was my fault. That was an oops. So I'm remaking this quilt block, and I will be using the background 2 to make a new one. But if you prefer background 1 instead of background 2 in this center, it is perfectly fine. You have enough fabric to do that. Just make a note in your pattern that that's what you're doing, and make sure you cut appropriately. All right, So one of the unique things about this quilt block, this Market Square quilt block, is that I used 3 different methods of making half square triangles to make it quicker and easier. They will all be trimmed to the same size, but I felt with the number that we needed to make of the green and the background, the red with the background, and the blue with the background, we needed to do the 8 at a time method. Next, and see here's blue right here too. The next method is the 4 at a time method. Now this is bias, so you need to prepare that fabric with spray starch before cutting the fabric. And that's the coral. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. The next method is the traditional method with the 2 at a time. And we all know how to do that one, but the fact that we can use 3 different methods to make the half square triangles, because as you can see, there's plenty of half square triangles in this, kind of mixes it up and makes it a little more fun. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have everything labeled. Here's my A's, and this is the 8 at a time. Here's the C, so this is coral right here. So I have those ready, and then here are the center half square triangles, the D's. Next, we have our B, our solid squares. We have our E smaller squares that go with the 9 patch in each corner. And then we have our framing strips right here, F. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab a fabric marking pen and you're going to draw a diagonal on both diagonals. So you're making an X on the back of your background A squares, which I've already done. As you can see, I have already drawn both diagonal lines on all 3 of my background squares. So I have my colors right here, my red, green, and my blue. So our next step will be to stitch a 1/4 inch away on both sides of the drawn line. Now, if you've never seen that before, let me grab my foot here, my sewing foot. So I have a black flange, which is a fabric guide on my 1/4 inch sewing foot because I need it. So when I lay this under my presser foot, when it's attached to the machine, I have that black flange running along the diagonal line, the drawn line, and the needle, which lands in the opening, will be a 1/4 inch away from the drawn line. We're going to do this on both sides of the drawn line, on both of the drawn line. So it's just like you're just sewing a double X. All right, so let's get these sewn, and then I'll meet you back here in a minute, and we're going to cut it apart and trim them to size. So I switched out to a rotating cutting mat so it makes it easier to cut these apart. So here's how I cut them apart. As you can see, I've already sewn. Well, let me make sure you can see. There we go. Well, I've used matching thread, but you know, if I go over here, maybe you can see the white thread. Okay. All right. So what I do is I have my ruler, because not only are we going to be cutting on the 2 drawn diagonal lines, but we also have to cut in half from top to bottom and side to side. If we can keep this all together without moving it for all the cuts, you'll be much happier. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut this in half. Now, very gently pick it up so that you don't move anything. And if you move anything, just adjust it. Rotate your mat. And if you don't have a rotating mat, use a smaller cutting mat so that you can just pick it up and move it yourself. Okay, so now we're going to do the other side. So this is the horizontal cut, the side to side. Again, pick it up very gently. And now we're going to do the diagonals. And once we finish cutting this, we will have 8 half square triangles. You need to press all the seams open on these half square triangles. And so that will be our next step. You're going to press them all, and then you're going to trim them to size. You have to trim all of the half square triangles to the same size. And look how pretty these are. Aren't they adorable? So here's the red. Here's the green. And here's, whoops, and here's all the blues. Perfect. All right, I need to trim mine up to size. Next, we're going to move on to the 4 at a time. So you need your coral and the background fabric that matches with that one. I'll meet you back here in a moment. Now we're going to make our 4 at a time. So you're going to take your C squares, your background C and your coral C. You're going to go right sides together. This is very, very easy. Now, these are bias triangles, half square triangles when we are finished. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch around all 4 of the outer edges. And then from there, we're going to trim them apart. So let me get mine sewn and I'll meet you back here. All right, so now I have sewn all the way around on all 4 edges a 1/4 inch in. Now for our next step, we're going to trim it apart on both diagonals. So I still have my rotating mat here. Again, I'm going to lift it gently, rotate it. These are well worth the money to have. These are so nice to have. And if you're wondering what brand this is from Martelli Notions. I'll put a link in the description box, okay? There's the next one. And now we have 4. Let's open these up. And there we go. We're going to press and trim to the correct size. All right, now let me set up for the next one. All right, next we're doing our traditional where you draw the diagonal line, just one diagonal line on the wrong side of your background fabric. This is background 2, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that diagonal line. I'm using a Frixion, or however you say it, a Frixion pen. I think it's Frixion, I'm not really sure. There you go. You're going to go right sides together, and you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch on both sides of that drawn line. Now, this is the way I do them because I think it's faster. I don't draw the diagonal line, but I line them up right sides together, and I go ahead and I cut them. And then I take them directly to the sewing machine, and I sew along that long edge. So let's get those done. It will be to press them and trim them all to size. Okay, for our next step, it is pulling the block together. So let me bring that over here. Clear my table. All right, so in your next step, you'll follow the pattern. You have your choice, actually. In the pattern, I have you joining everything, lay it out, and join row 1 together, row 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. But if you would like to do it a different way, let's see if I can use a piece of paper. You can join them in quadrants, just like that. And that might make it easier for sewing it together. So that would be like the first quadrant. And so you can mark this on your pattern if you'd like, so that you want to just sew these together. And then over here, here's quadrant 2. Notice it's the red side. So you're going to make 2 reds. If you do this in quadrants, you'll make 2 reds and you'll make 2 greens. Easy peasy. All right, get that together and get it pressed. And next, we're going to do the outer portion, which is our framing and our 9 patch. All right, let me get set up for that. So just a quick note, before you begin pulling your block together, don't forget you're going to need your B squares, your blue, your red, your green, and your background too. And just remember also, my oops was I use the main background in the center, and this is what it should be. It should be your background too, but you have enough to do either in your fabric supply list. All right, for the next step is to piece our framing strips and our 9-patch blocks. So I'm going to move this quickly. I have already pieced those, and they're very easy to piece. You're just going to sew your background F rectangles to your green, and you're going to press towards your green. You're going to make 4 of these, and they should be the same size as the quilt block. The next will be to join or make your little 9-patch blocks. Now in the pattern, I believe I have the colors laid out differently. The only thing that is the same is the blue in the center. Lay your colors out how you want to. It's no rhyme or reason. It works perfectly. Everything will be okay. You could even substitute one of the jade or a different green here or a different color here because of the green here if you don't want them to be the same color. I just thought it was kind of neat. You could even do blue, but I don't know if you have enough blue fabric to do that, but maybe you could go to your stash. All right, so you're going to make these and you're going to join. You're going to take 2 of your framing strips and you're going to join a 9-patch to either end. Just 2 of them, because the other 2 will sew to the left and right sides of the block, of the market square block, and then these will sew to the top and bottom of the market square block. I want to thank you for joining me today to learn how to make the market square. 3 different ways to make the half square triangles in the market square block. All right, don't forget that every Monday between now and about mid-October, every Monday morning at 9 a.m., the new set of blocks will be released. Remember, the quilt size is 42 by 42 inches, and you should be able to complete this quickly and easily. All right, everybody, thank you again for joining me. I look forward to seeing what you create. If you'd like to send me an email, you can send me an email to info@nancymcnallyquilts.com. Thank you and have a wonderful day.